What's good, everybody? Welcome to The Dime. Today, we preview the 2024-2025 Memphis Grizzlies with the host of the Next Gen podcast. Everybody give it up for Alex Winton.
What's
Alex,
up?
welcome to the show. First time guest. We actually don't talk much Grizzlies on The Dime. A lot of it is because last year there really wasn't much to talk about because everybody was freaking hurt. But
Yeah.
Everybody, what's up? Tell everybody about your pod, where they can find you, all that good stuff.
Yeah, what's up with y'all? I'm Alex, obviously co-host of the Next Gen podcast with my boy Bryson Wright. We have a podcast on Bluff City Media. We've been on a little break, but we're finna get back to it soon. Obviously as the season's finna roll around. But yeah, we talk about a lot of Grizzly stuff, mainly. Do talk about NBA obviously as well. But yeah, just excited to be here. This is gonna be fun. So like listen, the season's literally right around the corner. Media Day's Monday. So I'm excited. I'm excited.
All right, so let's get straight into it. We're going to do a segment that we like to call Headlines. This is where Kwab and I come up with headlines. We ask you if it's real or fake news. Here is headline number one. The Memphis Grizzlies, the NBA's most slept on team. Real or fake news, Alex?
Real news for sure. Because I think a lot of people, I would say fans, have kind of forgotten that, what the Grizzlies did when they were majority healthy. I think the thing is, people just think that obviously it's a different roster and the things of that nature. But some people look at the Grizzlies offseason and don't really give it hold weight too much to it because they didn't do a lot of different things. They just kind of re-signed one, Luke, and they drafted a couple guys, but that's really it. They didn't really do anything crazy like these other teams as we just saw with the Knicks and Wolves do. They didn't do anything crazy of those, sign anybody crazy. So people are just looking at oh, well, this is the same team that was there last year. They're not going to be as good when they don't realize that most of the pieces that were there last year didn't even get to play with each other, maybe for 5 or 10 game stretches, if that. And so all the pieces didn't get really to get a chance to really see each other, the full piece whole. So I think, we've seen you got a really good 2-year sample sizes when Ja, Jaren, and Bane are healthy, relatively healthy. They won 50 games and been a 2 seed the last 2 years before the year prior. So, I would expect, I think that should be I won't say expectation, but the history tells you, the sample size tells you that they're going to be a really good team. And, and there's some people that have the Grizzlies out barely scratching the play in and doing this. I'm not that person. I'm not saying we're gonna be the best team in the West, but I am not gonna be oh, we're just the bottom of the barrel team. I know what these teams are. Some of these teams are gonna be I'm confident saying they're better than, I won't say majority of the West, but at least half of the West. Is where I put it.
Do you feel like having the team that's not being talked about and viewed as underrated, do you think that benefits y'all in the long run because it helps motivate the team to play better during the season?
Oh yeah, I think so, right? I think this team they operate better when they're not thought about or talked about as much. Because it's like a running joke. It's at least in the Grizzlies, when in the fan base, it's when we always used to have basically national media televised games and stuff. It felt like they didn't never play as well because of that. But then when they're forgotten about, they always play better. I think they'll probably work from that position better because I think Ja even said it a couple weeks ago in an interview. Basically, it was look, we work better, or people have forgotten about him, and he was I think that works better for me. You know what I mean? People don't, that makes it even scarier. And I think the team as well because again, people don't because I want to say. All respect to the Thunder and all these young teams that were there, but the Grizzlies were the first young team that were that did all this before them. No disrespect to the Thunder and all them, but we were the team that won 56 games and was the second seed in the West and basically lost to the team that won a championship and had the up and up. No disrespect to the Wolves and Ant, but Ja was the guy that a lot of people had as that next guy to be in that next class of the Tatum, the Luka, the next new faces of the NBA as they go into this transition. So it's all these guys were that. I mean, Jaren was defense player, and all these guys are still 25, 26. So I think they understand, look, now 1 year, and the NBA moves fast. It's what have you done for me lately type of league. So when you're not producing at a rate, especially it's just recency bias, they're going to forget about you, especially when your best player only played 9 games and then everybody else only played 50 games, right? It just happened. That's just part of the league. That could happen to a team this year. They get hurt and then everybody forgets about them and then they come back the next year and they're oh, wait, what happened? So I think they do work from that standpoint of like being underdogs because, I think they just feel like they got to prove something. Just get, adds more to the chip on the shoulder.
All right, let's move on to headline number 2. Grizzlies are fool to trust Ja Morant. He will never learn. Real or fake news?
Fake news. I mean, I've been a critical guy of Ja Morant, obviously, over the last year and a half, too, especially when all the stuff came out. I've just always said, like, you can't do dumb things, just to be very blunt. Like, you just can't, like, you got to know who you are in this league in terms of, like, your place in this league. You are one of the best, like, players in this league. You are the face of a franchise. You got to understand that you just can't move the way you used to move. Like, that's the thing that I've always admired about other certain stars. Like, I'll say, for example, Jason Tatum. While, Tatum, his people have critiques of his game, I've never questioned that Tatum understands his place in the league. He's always moved like a face of, like, one of the faces of the league in terms of how he carries himself and things of that nature. Not to say Ja hasn't, but obviously it got away from it a little bit the last year and a half or so with the stuff that he was doing. And so you got to understand that this franchise depends on you. Like, you're the guy. And not only that, this league does too, to some extent. Obviously, that, the league moves fast and, they find new stars all the time. But, like, you're one of the most popular stars for this newer generation. Like, I'm obviously, again, he's not the same player, but, like, I want to say I could say, like, he's this generation's kind of like Iverson. Like, kids love Ja Morant. Yeah. Like, they love the Ja shoes, all that, jerseys. Like, they love Ja Morant. So you got to understand, like, your place in that. And I think he has, obviously, especially when you come back, you're 25, you take the 25 game suspension, right? You come back, your team is this bottom of the West, you start winning, and then boom, like that, you're out with a shoulder injury for the rest of the year. So basically, you come back trying to basically redeem yourself, and then you don't even get a chance to do it. And I think now at this point, you realize that the game can be taken away from you from your actions and just actions that are not out of your control. Like, injuries happen. Like, that just is part of the game. And so you got to understand, like, look, we don't, while they are young, time is not forever. Like, you have to take advantage of the window that you have now. And especially in this league, especially where I would say this is like a parity era, like the most parity where, teams are, you could win and be a 3 seed or 2 seed. Like, you don't have to just be a number 1 seed. Like, so this is the time to take advantage. And I think he understands that. So I think they should trust him. Obviously, now, granted, they're going to, he's got to do a lot of work to get their full trust back, like, not just the organization, but like fans and all that. But, like, I think he's worked his way to the point where people feel pretty good going into the season, at least, about his focus level.
All right, headline number 3. The honeymoon is over. Western Conference Finals or bust for the Grizzlies.
So dramatic
news. It has to be. Hold up, dramatic. This is the media, Kwab. Everything is dramatic, right? Headlines are everything.
It's over for them.
Yes. Have you not read anything online ever? Everything is the biggest deal ever.
You got.
Yeah. Like ESPN. Yeah. It's like ESPN saying, like, oh man, this is a bust year. Like, but
Armageddon.
Oh man. But no, I'd say probably I'd say fake news, right? Because again, I'm not, like, my expectation, right? I would say at least is you should want to compete, right? Like, they have the championship pieces to compete, right? If everything breaks right. But at the same time, the pieces haven't been all together yet. This whole roster hasn't played together. Even last year, like, a lot of people don't. We'll get into it, but people don't understand, like, the whole roster last year barely played together. So, like, I would say more so it's not Western Conference Finals a bust, but it's definitely not like, oh, we can have a repeat of last year. Like, you got to at least my opinion, you got to at least be top 4 or 5, win the first round, and then second round you look competitive. I think that's where, and then if you can get to the conference finals, like, cool. I think that's where most people at least Grizz fans and Grizz media, like, I think that's where they're at. I don't think it's Western Conference Finals or bust, because it's like these guys are, be frank, I'm 25, so, like, I'm the same age basically Ja Morant, Jaren, and all them. Like, Bane's like 26, I think. Either way, all around the same age. Like, most teams don't start, like, really winning championships until like 27, 28. Like, usually that's when they're if you look at history, most of the best players on those teams are like 27, 28. Like, you got a rare cases, like, where you got, like, D Wade and, like, some younger guys, but, like, that's not the norm. Like, you know what I mean? Like, norm is, like, usually when guys get 27, 28, that's usually prime time for contention. So I think they're like a year or two, I would say a year away from that, essentially. So I wouldn't say it's Western Conference Finals or bust, but definitely there are some expectations. I'm not just like, oh yeah, like if we got if we only win like 42 games or something, like, I got to see what happened. You know what I mean? So but it's not Western Conference Finals or bust now.
Yeah, you used a word when we were talking before the show. You said reestablish, which I think is the perfect word for this, where it's
Yeah.
just kind of like, just let everybody know we're back. You know what it is? Like,
Yeah.
we may not go to the Western Conference Finals, but you know what? We run around and we gave the Timberwolves a 7-game series or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
to me, that should be the goal for the Grizzlies. But let's move on to the offseason. You drafted Zach Edey, the big ass mother from Purdue. Yo, that mother is giant, man.
Crazy.
There's a lot of like speculation how he's going to fit in the league. There's a lot of people who think he's going to be a good NBA player. Obviously, you have the people who don't, just because of the way the game is now. How is he going to fit in with this roster? What are your expectations for him this year?
Well, okay, to start it off, I wasn't the biggest, like before pre-draft, I wasn't the biggest Zach Edey guy. Not in the sense of like I didn't think he's going to be a good NBA player. I thought he was. I was higher on Klingon in terms of at least for the Grizzlies fit, because I'm big on bigs that are versatile, like Jaren, like basically that can play, because in the playoffs you can be very limited when you got a slow foot big that can't guard or can't move. And then obviously with the Klingon stuff, like the trade stuff when it happened, like basically the Grizzlies sounded like the Grizzlies were gonna trade up and they didn't. So then they ended I'm like, it ended up getting Zach Edey, and it felt like that before the draft. I'm like, right an hour before, I'm like, they're probably gonna draft Zach Edey. And I was like, man. And I didn't hate him, but I just had friends that are high on Zach Edey. So like like just jokes wise, it was just like I can't let him win, but it happened. And then once I slept on it and looked at the film and like really sat with it, I was like, It makes sense. Like, because again, draft is all about fit. Like most of the time, guys got to go to the right situation. And that's like across the board in most professional sports. Like you need the right situation. And I'll say this: Zach Edey went to the perfect situation in terms of what he needed. I think he'll fit in pretty good, especially when I looked at summer league. Right away, he's going to be able to screen set and rebound, which is obviously what the archetype that we've had at that spot has been successful, especially when you had Steven Adams and Jonas Valanciunas. I think with him, the biggest thing for me, at least question mark wise, is really, again, playing in space. And obviously, I think basically reading the floor, playmaking. Because again, I'm big on, again, NBA is like this. A lot of it is you got to get 2 on the ball. And usually if you can get 2 on the ball and then play out of the short roll, that's usually most of your bread and butter. At least at the end, that's what boggles down in the playoffs. That's what we've seen a lot of teams be able to have guys that can operate out of that and either make the right decision, whether that is to finish at the rim or find an open guy in the corner on the wing. Like that's usually what it is. So for me, I want to see more of that. But I think right away, his screen setting, his rebound's going to fit in. I think he scores better than he's given credit for.
Yeah, he does.
I think, and he can shoot free throws. So like, while that's a big thing that also hurts bigs get played off the floor, is that they can't move and then they can't shoot free throws. He's like a 73% free throw shooter. So I think he's going to fit in right away. He's going to start. There's no way he's not going to start, because they didn't just draft. Like they talked about, we're going to add a center. Like Zach Klein said, we're going to add a center this season some way. And even the team said that, like players, like, and so my thing is, they're not going to start Jaren at the 5 no more. No disrespect to Jaren, but he's not a full-time 5. He can play 5, but he's not a full-time 5. Yeah. And so BC's 6'9". Like you go look at the roster, there's nobody else who's fitting that bill. So I think he's going to start. Now the minutes is the question in the current, because I think he's going to play a lot of minutes, but I could see his minutes being not low, but I could see his minutes being more around like the 20. Because I had a list of basically like a chart that I made out of the Grizzlies minutes. And I think I had him penciled around like 21 to like 23 minutes, which sounds low. But in retrospect, if you got him and then you got BC who plays well with Jaren, they're going to probably split the minutes. And I think it'll just be a game-by-game basis depending on the matchup, who you play. Yeah. But I think, he's gonna definitely start. I think he's going to play well. I mean, him and Ja's already worked out together in the offseason. So I think that's going to help their pick and roll chemistry. And apparently, based on Jaren and like some other people that have been around the team, like, they're working out now. Edey's been impressing everybody. So who knows? He might be better than what I've expected him to be or what everybody else's expectations to be. But I do expect him to fit in right away. And I don't really worry about the defense too much because he's playing next to Jaren. Like I saw Jonas Valanciunas and Steven Adams, who I thought were solid defenders, not great defenders, play next to Jaren, and we were a top 10 defense. Like I'm not that concerned about it. And 87-4. Like, yeah. You know what I mean? Like at some point, like he has some type of rim protection. So I think he's just fine for sure.
Watching when you talked about summer league, watching summer league, he had moments that like were very impressive because he's like Josh said, he's a big ass dude. But
huge man.
He's a big man. That's a big man. But the one
man.
thing was like, yeah, he had the ankle injury
Yeah.
when it happened in summer league, where you're just like, oh, here we go again when it happened, because it's like the Grizzlies just keep getting hurt.
Yeah. Well, see, for me, I wasn't. See, Grizzly fans got PTSD every time somebody gets hurt, especially after last year, because people don't realize, just to go back in time, like people don't realize the Grizzlies dealt with the injury season like that before, but that was with, Zach, Tony, Mark, and Mike when I think it was, I want to say 15, 16, if I'm not mistaken. They went like 42-40, and they had the most players to play in like a season, like active players, and still make the playoffs. Like I think we played like 28 players. We had Matt Barnes, all those guys on there. Like everybody was hurt, basically. Like Mark was hurt, Mike was hurt. So like we went through this before. So it's not like something new to us. So like now having it happen again with the newer generation, like everybody has basically PTSD. So when that happened, I was like, I wasn't really too concerned.
We're cursed. We're cursed.
Yeah, you're cursed. I hate using that word. I don't want to use that word yet. I don't, because it's just like, I don't want to wish that upon us yet. I'll let the season play out before I use that word. But yeah, no, I don't think so. But like watching those injuries, I think they were fluky. Like, because a lot of it was like him basically just basketball. Like if you play, like, ankles injuries happen all the time. Like little stuff like that happens. Like I think the first one, I think he was like boxing out and then moved, and then the ankle just kind of turned. Then the second one, he tried to contest a shot and then basically fell on somebody's foot. Like I'm not that concerned about those type of injuries. I think more so I could be concerned about the foot injuries in the sense of like a broken foot or something like that. Like with, like, because Jaren just dealt with a broken foot, not last year, but the year before. Because bigger guys always deal with those type of injuries where you got stress fractures, like those type of injuries, not like ankle sprains. So I don't really have concerns yet. Because again, even in college, he never got hurt. Like he never got hurt, like never. And he played like 30, like big minutes in college, like almost the whole game. So I'm not too concerned yet. I go off the track record. So like until I get a reason to be concerned, I think he'll be fine. So this is a bummer because he was playing so well, and then like he, boom. And we could have won Summer League championship too. No, like you know what I mean? Like that would be cool. But it is what it is. I'd rather you be healthy for the regular season.
We joke around. We call it the Ja Reminder Tour, because you finally hopefully get a healthy Ja, no distractions off court. What are you expecting from him this upcoming season on court?
I mean, I expect the same Ja Morant I've seen the last like 2 or 3 years. Like we're talking about a guy, if I had the stats up right correctly, he's basically been like the last 3 years, a walking 26 points, like 5 rebounds and like 8 assists. And that's like without a jump shot that's consistent. Or him hitting free throws consistently, because I'm always big on the free throws than I am the jump shot. Like I'd be like, bro, reason as a point guard, you should be like no lower than like 80% from the free throw line. So yeah, so like for me, it's like he's gonna do that same thing, and then on top of that, I think he's adding more to his game. I think we saw it in glimpses last year. I think he's adding more to his jump shot game, the mid range game at least. I thought he was really starting to be more willing to take that more, and he wasn't going for much of the highlight plays. Like he obviously he's still being aggressive to the rim, but like people don't realize like he was being smarter about his attempts at the rim, which I think he's always done that, but it's just been more about being consistent. Last year, he's very consistent. I can only think of like 3 times where he tried to like really dunk on somebody, or 3 really big dunks. Like one against Atlanta off a lob, dunked on Wemby, and then I think he tried to dunk on somebody in Sacramento. Like that was it. Everything else was like floaters.
You did like 9 games, bro.
Yeah,
that's casually. Okay, and then that's what I was casually. You just said, yeah, dunked on Wemby. Like it was like,
yeah, no big deal.
Yeah,
Dunking on Wemby.
Yeah,
like that man is like.
It's crazy, bro. I love it.
Bro.
I love it.
It's
I love
crazy.
it. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sorry to come off like I didn't like care, but like I've watched I've been a Grizzly fan for just background. I've been a Grizzly fan since like 2009-10, and then I've been so obviously like I've seen a bunch of eras of Grizzly basketball, and obviously with Ja Morant been here for like 5 years. Like I'm used to it at this point. Like I remember like when he dunked on like I want to say like Aaron Baines like his rookie year, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like. No, there's certain stuff that I'll still be like, man, that's tough. But like for the most part, like I've seen everything basically. So like I say it casually because like
you're spoiled. You're spoiled.
Even
that's the problem.
Even his misses are like insane.
Yeah.
like
insane.
just
Yeah, like the one with Kevin Love, like his rookie year, that was funny.
Yeah.
That's a funny miss. Like he has funny misses, but yeah, like I'm used to Ja being this good of a player. Like my expectations for him are high because I think while I'm big on not using the word superstar a lot because I think there's not too many of them, but I do think you got guys that are on the cusp of it, and I think he's one of those guys. I think if he improves his defense and obviously his jump shooting, I think those two things really take him into that next level where you can consider him like, because I got him as a top 15, 20 player. Like, honestly, I think he's closer to like a lot of players that they talked about him being better than, or players that are better than him. I think he's in the same tier. Like, I know this is going to be probably a hot take, but like and like SGA, like only two players I give like that I know for sure confidently ahead of him for me, in my opinion, are like a Luka and a Tatum because they've done it longer. But like outside of that, I think he's all on the same tier as those other guys based on the track record, especially because he's a guy that not only performs in the regular season, but in the playoffs, right? Like people don't understand he's had a 40 ball every playoff. Like, and then on top of that, like he was like doing all this, like he has records with like Kobe and LeBron, like,
yeah.
and that was like age like 22. Like, so like people got to realize like that, like that's not easy. And then on top of that, I think you're talking about a guy who he's a superior athlete, like we just talked about, but people don't give him enough credit for like how smart he is. Like Draymond said, he's one of the smartest players he's ever played against. And
Fantastic
Draymond
court vision, like
yes,
unbelievable court vision.
yes, great
court
playmaker. And I think we don't see a lot of guys that athletic and that high of IQ as a playmaker. That just that, and then so you're saying like if the guy gets a jump shot now, you basically got to pick your poison. That's going to be very tough. And so, and I think that's the difference because, you know, people say with smaller guards, it's hard to build around them, right? Because, you know, and you got to basically build around them perfectly, in which I do agree. And I think even then, I think they have all the contenders. Like I'm big on history. So like they got an All-NBA defender. They got a top 10 offense defense. Like they have the right pieces. It's just about for him, Ja Morant really just staying healthy. I think health, and at least in the playoffs, right? Health in the playoffs is really the biggest thing because he's always been hurt every time we get to the playoffs. Like, it's been a hand injury here, knee injury here. Like basically like how Embiid and basically like what the Clippers are going through, basically like their best players. Like they get to the playoffs and then they just get hurt. Like that just happens. You know what I mean? So hopefully he can stay healthy. But yeah, I think Ja could be in MVP talks this year. I know that's probably a big like I mean, because people forget like the year we won 56 games, I think he finished like 7th in MVP voting. And then I think the year after that, even with the off court stuff, I think he finished like 9th or 10th. So like and again, this is like I just said, like without the free throws shooting and the jumper being improved. So if he improves those things, he might be at like 30 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, and you're a top 3 seed in the West. I mean, that's pretty tough. You know what I mean? So my expectations for Ja are high. Like I think he's gonna be all NBA player again. So like, you know, like that's my expectation. When you're the best player, I'm just like, you know, I'm like I expect him to just do these things at this point because we're in year 5.
He's one of my favorite players in the league. I love Ja's game.
Oh yeah.
Ja Morant to me is everything that Russell Westbrook fans think Russell Westbrook is. If I'm being honest with you, I had to bring Russ into it because Russ is like this explosive. He goes 100 miles per hour, but Ja is smarter than Russ. Ja has better court vision than Russ. I'm sorry. To me, I know Russ has won an MVP. Ja Morant is still young. He still has to write his book out, and he hasn't accomplished some things that Russell Westbrook accomplished. Like I always say, watching Russell Westbrook play is like watching a bird fly into a window. Ja Morant at least has a plan of action every time he touches the ball, and he knows what he's doing. He has high IQ. I'm sorry. Everything that you talk, everything that Russell Westbrook fans say about about Russell Westbrook.
One of my first messages I got today. One of the first messages I got today was from Zach because he listened to the reaction podcast from yesterday, and he was like, "A great way to bait Josh about Russell Westbrook."
I didn't take it. I didn't take it.
Brought it up because we all know when Russ is mentioned, it's going.
I go crazy. I don't know what it is. But because he was talking about Ja Morant and his court vision and his IQ, and I'm like, yep. And then I'm thinking about Josh going to the hoop and trying to bang on everybody. He goes 100 miles per hour. And I'm like, he kind of reminds me of Russ. And then that's
talking about Ja. You're like, what about Russ?
I know. I got a problem.
This is why he's not Russ.
Sorry, Alex.
Well, no, you're good.
About the Grizzlies. We're here to talk about the Grizzlies.
Last day. To be fair, Ja did say Russ is one of his favorite players. And I will say, while Ja has smart moments, Ja has very moments of like, what are you doing in the sense of not like turning the ball over, but more so like, why did you try that dunk? Like people forget like when he got hurt in the playoffs against AD, he tried to dunk on him when he could have just shot the floater. Like little stuff like that. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But outside of that, yeah. But you know, shout
All
out,
right, I'm
shout out
sorry.
to Russ, man.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Shout out to
Anyway,
Russ, man.
Jaren Jackson Jr. Jaren
Yeah.
Jackson
Go ahead,
Jr.
man.
Let's talk Jaren Jackson Jr. Do you think his offensive role is going to be expanded this year? Obviously, everyone was hurt last year, so he had to take on a little bit more. What do you see happening in the half court with Jaren Jackson Jr.?
I think I mean, again, I think he was the biggest guy to get criticism last year from Grizzly fans and fans alike because, you know, or fans that are not Grizzly fans, like just basically because he scored more, but his efficiency dipped. And then when they were bad, it was him and Bane basically. And I think people kind of like were quick to criticize him because again, he falls into basically the second or third best player. I think he's probably the second best player, even though he's the third best scoring option,
Yeah,
right?
overall,
Because
he
I think,
yeah.
yeah, because of the defensive side. Like he scores basically 18 to 20 points a game, and he's all NBA defender. So like, whereas Bane's more of a 25 points per game guy, but he's not the same impactful two-way guy, which is fine. But I think now him sliding back into his regular role as a third guy, I think is going to pay off dividends. I think people again, very small sample size of 9 games. So people during that time, those three, Ja, Bane, and Jaren were playing their best basketball together. Like I think the first 3 or 4 games they scored 20 plus every game. And like that was the first time in their careers that's ever happened. And I think it was efficient basketball too. It wasn't like they were like chucking, like they were flowing like very well with each other. And again, because a lot of the time, what happens with them in the last 2 or 3 years is that two of the three will play with each other, and then somebody will get hurt, and then by the time like they get back, another person gets hurt. Like that's literally what happens like every year. It seems like because it happened the year before where Jaren was hurt to start the year. Bane and Ja played together, and then Jaren came back, then Bane went out. Like so, they never really get to play together. And so I think that kind of hurts Jaren's pecking order in terms of where he scores, like in terms of like his role in the shots. But I think now him settling in as like a third option, second option at times, 2A, 2B type of thing. I think that will help him. Obviously, I think the efficiency will go up. I think the 3 ball is still a question because he could shoot the 3 ball, but a lot of people hope he could get back to what he was his second year where he shot like 39% on like 7 attempts, which is like crazy. I don't think he'll ever get to that, but if you can get back to league average of like 4 attempts, that's fine. Yeah. But I think the biggest thing for him, the growth that we saw last year was the playmaking. He's always been I don't want to say bad, but really just a guy that had tunnel vision because he never really saw the floor well, which again, some guys don't see it. It takes reps to really get it, to see the floor like that, map it out. Like, because again, he's always been like a big, he's never been a guard. He's never had to look at a guy like getting others involved, which is not a bad thing. That's just never been his role. So I think last year he averaged 2 assists. Now I know that sounds very like minuscule, like 2 assists, but like when you look at his numbers, he's shooting only average like, I'm not mistaken, he only averaged like 1 point. Yeah, the last few years before that, he only averaged like 1.1 assists. And last year it was 2.3.
Double the assist, baby.
Yeah, he basically exactly. And so I think again, like I was talking about, I mentioned earlier, 2 on the ball, and especially in the playoffs, like it's gonna be big time when you're playing at a pick and roll with Ja Morant. He's going to get 2 on the ball. So who's gonna be in those role situations? It's probably gonna be Edey, probably gonna be Jaren, it's probably gonna be BC. So like you need guys that can make decisions out of that. And I think him improving his decision making is the biggest thing. So I don't really expect a scoring jump from Jaren per se. I expect more of what we saw 2 years prior, where he's around like 16 and like 18 points a game, probably 50% from the field, 36 from 3, 80 from the line. And I want to see more rebounding. I'm not saying he needs to be a 10-point rebound guy, and I'll never see that. But can you get me like 8 rebounds a game and like 2.5 blocks and like 2 assists? I think that's a great season for Jaren Jackson Jr. Like I think that's perfect because I think he's like a Drew Holiday type player. What I mean by that is like he's better when he's asked to be a third option versus being like your clear second cut guy. And that's a championship piece. I know that sounds like a diss, but like Drew Holiday's been on 2
Drew Holiday has 2 titles on 2 different teams.
That's what I'm saying. So like you need championship pieces. Like I think people get so caught up in like people having to be the guy when it's like, bro, you need the complimentary guy. So, I think that's what he is. He's a complimentary star, which is great. And so I think, him being back in that role will pay off dividends. So, yeah.
Speaking about who might actually be like the clear-cut second option is Desmond Bane. What are your thoughts about him and like his season he had also was like a shortened season. But what do you expect from him this upcoming season? Do you feel like he has a chance to be an all-star conversation? It's not used to their coaches because he's a guard. It's always tough. But like to have a consistent type of year where he's in the conversation, do you think he has the ability to enter that?
Yeah, I think with him, he's always gotten better every year. So my expectations kind of like, again, like you said earlier, spoiled. I probably am spoiled, which now I am. Which is, I mean, again, that's just how it is. When I've dealt with this team for the last 5 years in terms of their growth, because their growth was linear for like 3 years and now or 4 years, and then you had a bad year. So like my expectations kind of high, but like, yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be in those conversations. I don't think he'll make it just because, again, the West is so tough. Like, we can get into names, but just like, if you're not like a guard putting up like basically like 28, 6 and like 7 or 8, like you could just like De'Aaron Fox averaged like 25, 5 and like 6 last year. And he didn't make the All-Star team, right? Like, so it's just tough. Like the West is very tough. Like, you know what I mean? So like you know, it's gonna be very hard. But I think people will view him as like the clear cut like second option. Like, you know, like he averaged 24 last year, and that was a lot. And then I think again when Ja came back, I think he was averaging even more points than he did when Ja was gone. So like I think that's gonna help him out, Ja being back, a guy that kind of gets him off the ball, which he can be on the ball. But I think him, obviously, that's been his bread and butter. That's how he came up in this league, was a catch and shoot player. So I think that is going to continue to just be his, you know, his MO, while him still being able to be on the ball. Playmaking has gone up. He's averaged 4 or 5 assists the last few years. So I think, you know, again, I think for him it's just health. Like the last 2 years, he's been unlucky with injuries, I think, because the first 2 years he was really healthy. Then the third year he had that broken, basically fractured toe, and then basically played the season on it. And then last year last year, or the year before that, in the playoffs, he got his back hurt. Then this year, like we played the 9 games, and then people forget, like literally we lost like 3 starters in like a week, like literally 2 days, like a week span. I remember Ja injury, shoulder, Smart messed up his finger in against Dallas, and then the game against the Clippers, Bane's ankle touched earth, and we didn't see him till March.
Dog.
Like literally touched earth. Like I remember it. Like he's not playing like that. So like those type of stuff, happened. Like I think he's been more unlucky than like, you know, like it's bad durability questions, but we'll see. You know what I mean? Like but yeah, I think that's really the biggest thing for him, just health. Like if he can stay healthy, he's gonna be consistent. Like I know what I'm getting from Desmond Bane. Like he's gonna be like basically 50, 40, 90, and he's gonna average like 22 points a game, 5 assists, 5 rebounds. Like I know what I'm getting from Desmond Bane. So yeah, I think he'll, you know, because people view him as like I don't want no disrespect to this player, but people view him as like a Tyler Hero, Jordan Poole type of player, where he's like more of like a bench bucket getter, like your 6 man a year. Like no, he's more than that. Like we've seen it, but I think people don't really give him much credit because I guess, you know, people think he's shorter because he got the shorter arms, stuff like that. Like they don't give him like credit, like in terms of like how he really plays. Like, but I think he's one of the best 2 guards in the league. So I think we'll continue to see that as he goes forward, because he's only 26, so he can still get better, even though he's probably closer to what he's going to be.
All right, GG Jackson, give me a grade for his rookie season, and how do you expect him to fit in now that everybody's back?
Listen, I said it on Get This Pod, it hasn't come out yet, but I am bullish on GG Jackson. I in terms of like and what he could be, what he's going to, what I think he's going to be, and what, you know, what can he provide for this team. If you talk about a letter grade for his rookie year, I'd probably say I give it like a B, just because, or a B plus probably, because I think people don't understand, like basically he was always supposed to be a lottery talent, but just, you know, the situation he was in South Carolina messed that up, his draft stock and stuff like that. Some of it was South Carolina, some of it was him, right? You know, being on IG Live and talking about the coach, and you know, that kind of gives you a bad reputation, right? Like for real, just gives you a bad reputation. Like that's just what it is. But again, like I said earlier, situations, like I think this is a perfect situation to fall into. Now, granted, I didn't think he's going to play right away, obviously, because we had different expectations, but obviously the season progressed, people got hurt, he played, and then when he played, he showed me more than I thought he was going to show, in the sense of his game is, I forgot to use it with Bane, but Bane's so good at being, his game is so good because he's scalable. I think if you can be scalable in terms of how you fit in with guys, that increases your floor to play with other people regardless of the lineup. And I think his scalability as a scorer was the biggest thing for me, because people look at his 15 points a game last year and they think he was like, you know, they'll look at the game, the points, they'll look at the games, and they'll be like, oh, he's on a bad team.
Right.
Yeah, but you didn't really,
because there was no one else. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you really watch the team, like again, most people didn't watch because they were bad. But people don't realize regardless of which role he played, he was the same player in terms of scoring the ball. Like, he came off the bench, was averaging like 12, 13 points a game. He played game, and then he started with Jaren and Vince Williams, and then he still was averaging 15 a game. Then people forget Bane came back later in that year. Now, it was only like 3 or 4 games. Again, small sample size, but he was starting with Bane and Jaren, and he was averaging like 20 points a game. Like, I remember, people don't forget, they played Golden State on national television. They Bane, and all 3 of them played, and I think Gigi had like 25 points. And that's with Bane and Jaren on the floor, and he's not taking shots from them. He's scoring in the flow of the offense because he's doing a lot of catch and shoot cutting, and then he'll create when he needs to create, attacking closeouts or second, like late clock situations. Like, so my thing is this. We saw them when they won 56 games. We talked about Zaire Williams. He started like most of that year because Dylan Brooks was hurt. And basically it was the trio, Steven Adams and Zaire Williams, and they won like 10, 12 games in a row. And I think Gigi Jackson's a much significantly better player than Zaire Williams. Yeah. So imagine that with these versions of Ja, Jaren, and Bane, who have gotten much better. So that's why I was always big on him saying, like, I know people were saying, like, we'll talk about Smart, but like people's talking about Smart starting. I'm not big on that because I think he's more of a guard than a wing. And history tells you don't win with smaller lineups. Yeah. I think Gigi's the wing of your future. So my biggest thing is, like, you might as well start him right away. Like, that was my biggest thing. But obviously, foot injury cooked it. So I'm like, well, now, so now I'm like, that's going to have to probably wait till like his 3rd year. But like, I was saying, like, start Gigi now because we seen teams because I think people see Gigi and they'll be like, he was a 2nd round pick. And so they'll be like, why would you start a 2nd round pick when he really is a lottery talent? Like, right. We saw the Nuggets. They didn't say Michael Porter Jr. I mean, he came off the bench his 1st year, but they didn't. After that, they were like, we're going to start you. It didn't matter. Like, they took him at like.
To justify it when it's a lottery pick, but when it's a 2nd round pick, everyone's like, what are you doing? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So like, for me, I'm just like, okay, like, that's why people are like, oh, he's not ready to play. And I'm like, bro, we just saw him play with these guys. Like, and I know people are saying like his role's going to be smaller and he's not going to be able to play well. I think he will because he understands, like, he played in a system where he couldn't just, he didn't play in a bad situation where he got to take all the shots. Like, he had to play in the flow of offense to get minutes. Right. He had to play the defense to get minutes. He had to do stuff to get minutes. Like, Taylor Jenkins is not going to just let guys take 40 shots a game and just BS and mess up the whole offense. Like, he had to play in the flow in the system. And I think he understands that. So when he gets healthy and plays well, I think it's going to get to a point, obviously, hot take, obviously, where it's going to be like, okay, why is he only playing like 20 minutes? He should be playing like 25, 26 minutes. Not saying he should play 30, because again, if he's not playing well, then you could finish with, Smart at the end of the games or something like that. But like, I think he's the wing of the future, obviously. And I'll say this last thing, like, a lot of, you could tell how players are viewed, especially on their team, when the best players talk about him in a certain light. Ja, Bane, Jaren, all have talked about him like he's like going to be one of the best players in the league. Jaren said he's going to be one of the best players in the league. Bane said he's one of the most talented players he's ever played with. And then Ja was talking about him, saying, like, obviously they're from South Carolina, but Ja's been high on him, obviously. So like, when your star players are pushing him, as basically they're talking about him like he's one of the core guys, like one of them. Yeah.
He's one of us.
Yeah. Yes, basically like one of the guys that's going to be here for 10 years. You would think he's probably going to end up that way. And the film tells you that. Like, I don't think the film doesn't tell me, like, I know what my eyes are telling me. My eyes are telling me this guy's going to be like, at least at worst, a starting wing in this league. I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar, but I know he could at least be Michael Porter Jr. And he said that, I think in an interview, basically, like, he could play the Michael Porter Jr. role with these guys coming back, which it would be perfect for him. And I think he's can be a better defender than him. So, I'm high on Gigi Jackson. I think he's going to be, I'll say this, if he's not starting by 25, 26 that season, something happened. I don't know what happened, but something bad happened. I need to talk to him. Yeah. Something bad happened. So I'm high on Gigi Jackson for sure.
We're gonna go to our X Factor section where we talk about some players that are gonna be big X Factors for your team. We're just talking about Gigi, and I also expected him to be a starter before he got hurt. The other player who I thought who I was like, okay, well, Gigi's out, he's gonna fill in, was Vince Williams Jr. And then I got the notification
Yep.
that he's out, and I'm like, dog, what the
yeah, what the hell?
But
cursed.
No, we're not using that word. No.
Yeah, we can't use the word. Can't use
that word. But let's real quick on Vince. He had a great year, even though, again, there was a lot of injuries, but the way he stepped up and the way he was able to show his two-way ability. How did you feel about him during the course of the season, and how do you think he'll fit in moving on?
I mean, when at first, right? Because Vince Williams, this is his second year, so I remember last year I wasn't necessarily not saying I wasn't high on him, but I was like, okay, can this? Because for me, with wing players, at least on this team, I'm like, can you make shots? Like that's the baseline for me. If you're gonna be a wing player on this team with Ja Morant as your best player, like I need to know you can shoot the ball. So he wasn't making shots early on, so I'm like, okay, well, I don't really got no disrespect, I ain't got no place for you right now. But then obviously, like as the season went on this year, it was like right before I would say like Ja got back, he started to play a little bit more. I mean, he had a good summer league before that last year, so I was like, okay, he might be able to play. And then he played right before Ja got back, and I'm like, he's actually doing some things. Like he was always a really good three, like he was projected to be a good 3-and-D guy, but he started to make shots. And then basically when Ja got back, people forget like Smart was hurt still, so they started like you were talking about. They started, it was Ja, Bane, Vince, Jaren, I think Bismack, obviously, and which tells you how much the center position was in a bad place when Bismack Biyombo started. But they started that lineup and they were relatively pretty good those games they played. I'm pretty sure they won like 3 or 4 games out of that in that little sample size. And then with Vince, like he grew as the season continued to grow. Like the version we saw of Vince when those guys all played together and at the end of the year was 2 totally different players, because once those guys went out, he had to get more opportunity on the ball. He was playmaking a lot. Like he had a couple games where he almost had like triple doubles because he's a good rebounder too. And so for me, he's doing all these things. And I'm like, wow, like imagine this Vince playing with, this version of Vince playing with those guys now. Yeah. And especially when Gigi got hurt, I was already saying like Vince Williams is like, obviously, I'm not saying he's this player, but he reminds me of this player for our team. I said he's going to be our Josh Hart, where he's going to play like basically like 2 through like 4, basically for this team now, especially with Gigi hurt.
Swiss Army
knife. Rebound the ball. Yeah, Swiss Army knife. Could play all these positions, and now he's hurt. So now it's like, man. But I think he's going to fit in just fine. Like he's a guy that you don't have to run plays for him to be impactful. Like he's going to get his stuff in the flow of the offense, and he showed that. So again, his durability has been a question because he's dealt with injuries before this one, in terms of like his college career, high school career. So that's why I wanted to start Gigi instead, because I felt like if you play Vince like too many minutes, you might put him in a situation where he's, overextending himself and you put him in more injury risk. But I think he's going to be great when he gets back. Hopefully this shin injury is nothing but like, hopefully it's like only 4 weeks. I got PTSD thinking it's probably going to be like 6 to 8 weeks. But yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be really good for this team. Like he's going to be a key piece. Like I think he's going to be really, really good. Like I think he's going to be Josh Hart for this team. Like that's just what I think. Like he's going to be like one of those players where you can look at and be like, man, he's going to compete every night. He's going to impact winning at a high level. So yeah, I'm high on Vince Williams, man. But again, injuries. Now I gotta wait. I was excited. Now I gotta wait like 2 extra months. 2 extra months before I see him and Gigi. So
all right. Well, Brandon Clarke's healthy. Hallelujah. Yes.
I know.
Another person from injury.
How confident are you that he can return back to what he was?
I mean, I think he showed it, right? Like I think people don't realize like he played like again. I keep saying the word small sample size, but
it's a very small sample size.
I have to keep saying it because it was literally that's what it was. Like it was like I think he played, if I'm looking at it correctly, he played 6 games last year, right? Yeah. Played 22 minutes. But his numbers look basically what it looked like the last 4 years. And then when I watched him when he played, he looked the same. Like you could tell, like because he's an athlete, and so he lost. I won't say he lost a lot of his burst. Like he was still very athletic, but he wasn't dunking like every time he caught a lob. But like I think he's a smarter player than he's given credit for, and he's always had a great floater, right? And I think was not going to change. So that's why he was still really good. So I think BC being healthy is going to really be big because people forget that he won us a playoff series in 22-21 or 21-22 when we played the Wolves that year because Jaren was in foul trouble, and basically he was beating the Wolves by himself. It was him and Bane carrying that team most of that series. Like I think Brandon Clarke averaged like 12 and like 8 that series. Like so he showed that he could be a playoff rotation player in big moments, and so. That's why, I always thought when, he was hurt and then Adams was hurt, people were having conversations like, are you going to bring both back? And if you don't, who you trade? And I'm like, I was always saying you trade Adams because BC showed you he could be a real, productive player even in the postseason. So I think him being back is going to help because now it just gives you more optionality because him and Jaren together as a front court duo, like you go look at the numbers, it's like ridiculous. Like them, it's like I don't know what the numbers are off the top of my head, but it's probably top 10 or top percentile in all those numbers when you see when him and Jaren on the floor together, like they basically cook every time. So like I expect that same productivity from him when that happens. But yeah, I just think he's going to have a really good season. I'm hoping he can be healthy because he's never been the healthiest player, right? Like he's never played over 70 games. He's always played like 50, 60 games. But I think that's good for him because he's always been like a 18 to like 20-minute player anyway. So, and he'll close games, depending on matchup. So as long as he's healthy, I think he's going to be very, very productive. I'm ready to see it. So excited.
Luke Kennard, do you think he can provide some extra shooting, some spacing for the team moving forward?
Yeah. The thing with Luke Kennard is he's good. He's a good player. But when you look at this roster, he's more of a guy that he's going to play. But it wouldn't surprise me if he's a guy that plays like lower minutes because he is a shooter. But when you talk about that one now, granted, he's going to play high minutes now. But before Gigi and Vince got hurt, it was like those guys, like he's a shooter, but he's the same size as your guards, like your real combo guards. And he's expected to be a wing player more than a combo guard, right? And just looking at the money situation, it's like you're paying already 3 guards, like 20 plus million. You're paying Smart 20-something million. You're paying Bane 30 million. You're paying Ja 30 million. Why would you get another 6'4" guard? So, like, he's always looked more like a trade chip to me, which I think he still is to some extent, especially had a contract set up. He could be a trade chip, but I do think off rip, he provides value because this team needs shooting. They've been a bottom shooting team this whole tenure for Ja Morant's career, which is why I've always been critical of more of the front office than I am the coaching or anything else because you get guys that your offense shows you get open shots, but you need guys to make shots. So Luke Kennard off rip is going to make shots. So he provides a role. I just think the lineups that you're going to have to play him in are very hard to do, depending on what, because you need size though, right? In today's NBA, you need size with skill and athleticism and shooting. So again, him being 6'4" or 6'5" is not ideal, but again, in regular season it's going to work. So like I think he provides, a role catch and shoot guy, but I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if he is a trade chip at the deadline, depending on where the team is at, right? Like I think him and I would say like a Santi Adama, maybe even a Smart, depending on how the team things go. I think those guys are like guys that could be turned into trade chips to get a guy that fits better for what you need. So, but I do think he's going to be good for this team. Like people forget like before, like when 22-23 season when he first came to the team, when him and Bane were on the floor together with Ja Morant, they were like killing teams. Like they were like blitzing teams because Ja Morant with those shooters and that spacing, like it was just, it was curtains basically. So I think that same thing's going to happen this year now, especially with Vince and Gigi being out. They're probably just going to give him those minutes. And I think that you're going to see like some real nasty stuff, especially if Edey's on the floor and now he's getting screening for them and they're getting wide open looks. Like that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough for a defense. So I'm ready to see it for sure.
All right, you mentioned this guy before. You were talking about Marcus Smart. Where does he fit in with all this? Off the bench? Does he start? How many minutes? What lineups do you like him in? I mean, last year you acquired him, and it just seemed like last year was kind of a waste of year because like everyone was hurt. So his role's still kind of up in the air. How do you see him fitting in?
Well, yeah. So for me, I like the Smart addition at first, right? I was big on, I like it, but I've always been big on, I never liked him as a starter because I just don't love the fit of him as a starter. He can play with the starting unit, and he's probably going to start now because they're probably just going to start Bane at the 3, Ja's at the 1, Smart at the 2. Smart's going to guard 2s and 3s, but Bane is, based on size, he's basically playing the 3. Yeah. But I've been big on Smart being like our Andre Iguodala, right? Because I think people forget with Golden State, they had basically started Iguodala before I think Kerr got there, and they were good that year. But then when Iggy came off the bench, they started Harrison Barnes, and then obviously with more things, that wasn't the only thing that changed their team around. Obviously, Steph got better, Kerr came in, Draymond started, right? They stayed, but him as a 6-man guy, that ended up being the best thing for Iguodala in his role, his career, because he could come off the bench, help second units and then finish games. I think with this team, Smart could do that same thing. Now, I think they're going to start him because, again, like you said, they gave up not a lot to get him, but they gave up, the trade gave us some assets to get him. So I think they're going to try to see if he can start. And now, obviously, he's going to start because the guys that were going to start are hurt. You know what I mean? Like, or could start or are hurt now. So, like, it's just like I think he's gonna, fit in well. Like his playmaking and defense is gonna pop off. Like I saw that in the games that he played with those guys early on. But for me, it's just about shot making. Like I'm already questionable in terms of the starting lineup they'll be good offensively. They won't be bad.
Yeah.
But they'll be great defensively. But I wouldn't be surprised if the offense is like basically the 10th or like 11th best offense instead of like the 5th best offense, because Smart's never been a consistent shooter his whole career. So when you're talking about Ja's never been a consistent shooter, Smart hasn't been either. Jaren is a streaky shooter, and then Edey doesn't take threes. Bane's still your only guy in that starting lineup that provided any floor spacing. So it could get real clunky at times if Smart's not hitting or Jaren's still the same shooter. And then if Edey's not taking a leap as a shooter or taking threes, like, and then Ja's not shooting, like it can get very muddy. Like, right? He's going
to take those threes. He's going to shoot.
Oh no, he's going to take them. Yeah, like he's got a little bit of Dylan Brooks in him, but again, which is fine because he doesn't do it as much.
Yeah,
but
smart is probably, I always say this, is probably one of the most clutch non-shooters I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he always takes like big time shots, hits them. And I don't know if it's because people don't expect him to hit him because he's open, but like he has you can look at it like his clutch numbers are kind of like ridiculous for somebody that's not a shooter.
Yeah, Kwab, I was gonna say that. So his playoff numbers, if you go look at his playoff numbers, he shoots like 36. Like I think in the last 2 or 3 years, he shot like 37, 38% in the playoffs, like from three. Yeah. So like he's a gamer. So that's why I like Smart. Yeah, I like Smart in that sense because he's gonna show up. I don't have to worry about him showing up in the playoffs. Like I know he's gonna impact winning in that. But just for me in this team, I think the role they're trying to play him in is not the most optimal role for this team because I think they're trying to play him in a guy like they basically want him to be a wing defender and make a lot of threes, where I think he's more of a guy where he's more of a combo guard running the offense and he's working off of other shooters instead of being the shooter. So I think, that's going to be not a tough fit. And again, they might prove me wrong. Again, I think they'll still be good. I wasn't saying like they're not going to be good. We'll talk about it. I think they're going to be great, right? But like, I just think, people are going to have some of the same questions they had the past couple of years. And it's going to be because they don't have the consistent shot making in that group. And then again, he's small. So then that it's going to force you to play smaller lineups now because they're probably going to play the trio plus him. And then you play BC. That's a kind of a small unit. And again, that works for certain, teams that can work against, but like you're going to need to play, you're going to have to play bigger lineups at some point. So that's my only real concern is the shot making and the size difference. But I mean, I think he's going to be a great player. Like he's going to be really good for this team again, especially defensively. I think this defense is going to be like top 5 in the league again. Like it's just, I think it's going to be like teams are going to really hate us defensively when they got to play against us.
Yeah, I'll say there's like other players we could always mention because the Grizzlies always do a great job drafting players I've never heard of, and then I have PTSD watching John Conchar like giving my team buckets. But that's what I'm not bringing up. But besides the point, what is your season prediction for this team? Hopefully you guys stay healthy, but what's the outlook for this team for the whole for the season?
Well, okay, so for me, I've always said at least for me with the West, right? I've looked at the West and I felt like, especially as the moves went on, I thought there was like a top 5 clear teams, right? I'm naming OKC, Minnesota, Denver, Dallas, and then us. I thought those were the 5 teams in the West that kind of looked the best in the sense of like I break it down to these things. Like, what do your best players look like? Are they younger? Are they in their primes? Are they in their careers? Where's the upside to get better? Like, do you got other young players that can get better? What's your assets looking like? All that. Like, but really those 3 things. Are your best players fit together? Like, and I just look, all those teams got younger stars that fit together and they got guys that could get better. Well, Denver's not young, but they're in their prime. But they got guys that could get better. Dallas got Luka, and then they got Lively. Like, they got guys that could get better, make leaps. The same for us. And so I thought those were the 5 best teams. Now, that order, don't really know. Again, OKC's probably comfortably, I won't say comfortably at 1. I would say regular season, right? Regular season, they'll be 1, I think, just because they got a lot of depth. I think they'll probably be healthy, relatively healthy. They'll probably be because they got the most depth. Just because, like I just think regular season they're gonna roll. Now after that, I was gonna put Minnesota 2. After this trade, I'm not that high on it because at all, I was like, why? I mean, I know why they did it. It's more of the CBA stuff, but now I'm just like, now I think your offense just gets even clunkier. So now I'm like, okay, who's gonna be at 2? I would put Denver, but their young guys are so improving. I don't know what they're gonna be.
But they got
Dallas,
Russell
you could
Westbrook.
put, yeah.
Stop. I'm not taking the bait. I'm not taking the bait.
Hey, I will say that is a solid addition for him. But even then, I still think they depend on a lot of young guys. And then you go Dallas. I think Dallas is really good. Luka's going to be good. Lively's going to be better. But we got to think Kyrie's getting older. Clay's older. So, like, are they going to be a 2 seed? Like, and then I'm looking at, like us. And I'm like, okay, they could easily be maybe 2 again. Like, now granted, a lot of things got to go away. Like, does the offense look great? Like I said, does the offense not going to be as clunky? Is it going to be, like, are guys going to stay healthy? Is Edey going to be as good as he's going to be? Is it going to be a bust? Like, he looks like lost. Like, we don't know yet. These are all variables that we don't know. There's a lot of things you're depending and hoping on, but you got to see it play out. But I think comfortably they'll be top 5, relatively healthy, right? Like, that's just where I'm at because no disrespect to teams that got better. I think the Kings got better, but I don't think they're better than us, right? I think the Suns got better to some extent. But I do think also last year they got a relatively good bill of health last year because KD was like healthy as he's ever been in the last 3 or 4 years. I don't know if that's going to last, right? Then you got to look at the Lakers. They were healthy last year when they were like a 9 seed. They didn't change their roster. Like, so when you go through these teams, Clippers lost Paul George. So, like, you go through these teams, like, they were better than most of these teams beforehand.
Yeah.
And now they got better. So, you know what I mean? So, like, that's why I'm like, I put them top 5 relatively healthy. The best case scenarios is they could be a top 3 seed and then, they make, the conference finals or compete. But yeah, I think relatively speaking, top 5 is where I got them at. And then, they'll win, I think 50 something games probably, or at least right at 50 games. And then, I think that's really my expectation, right? Like that's just again, spoiled. I know it's spoiled, but like when I've seen my 3 best players healthy, they've won 50 games, 2 out of when they're all starting, I should say, because Bane started his first year. When they all started together, they've been a 50-win team consistently. So I don't know why my expectations should change just because Ja missed 25 games last year, first off, and then he got hurt again because they were on a 50-win pace when he was back. So that's just kind of my, I know, sound like I'm spoiled.
That sounds fair to me. That's how I would be thinking if I was a Grizzlies fan.
Yeah. I sound entitled, but like that's just I know what I've seen. So like these are top of these are some of the best players in the league. Like Ja's a top 20 player. I think Jaren and Bane are at worst top 40, 50 players, right?
Yeah.
So and I think all 3 of them are top 10 at their position. Well, I think Ja's top 5 is his position possibly, and then you could say Jaren and Bane are close to top 5-ish, maybe 6, 7-ish. But either way, they're top at their position. So
yeah.
I just think they're going to be a really good team. This is health wise. Look, got my fingers crossed because I don't look. Training camp. Yeah, training camp is right around the corner. Look, on Monday, right around the corner. But I hope I don't get no other Grizz PR notification saying, "Hey, we got this medical update." Such and such. I'm hoping I don't see that again. I'm hoping I don't see that again before the season. I'm hoping I don't see that again. I should, but. That's where I'm at. I think they're gonna have a good season. Like you said, like I said earlier, like we said when we were off air, I said reestablish. I think that's the biggest thing. They just gotta reestablish themselves. And I think they will. Again, people are gonna be it's a what have you done for me now lately? So people have forgotten. But then we're gonna look up in like the end of basically like November or right in the top of December and be like, oh man, the Grizzlies like second in the West again. Oh my goodness, like
18-6.
Who knew?
Yeah, 18. Yeah. They were like 20 and 8 or something. Oh wow, like what did they do? Like, and then they're gonna be surprised. But yeah, no, my expectations are very, I won't say high. I mean, they're high on the season, right? Like injuries have bummed it out because I was really high on Gigi and Vince fitting in with this group. Now, like I said, I gotta wait like basically halfway through the season to get it, but it's still a lot to be hopeful about. Like, it's not the end of the
Yeah.
world, right? Like, this happens. And so it's still gonna be a fun season, not just for us, but the NBA regardless. Like, it's gonna be a great season. But for us in particular, I'm excited. I'm ready to kind of, because I've been saying that a lot on Twitter. I said we won't, what Geno Smith said, we won't write back. I've been saying that a lot. Like, we won't write back this year. So, like, that's where I'm at. We won't write back this year. Like, so, people wrote us off. So, we'll see.
All right, Alex Winton, everybody. Thank you for coming on, talking Memphis Grizzlies. Let everybody know once again where they can find you on Twitter, Instagram, whatever platform you prefer, and where they can find your podcast.
Yeah. So give me a quick second, because I'll be forgetting. So see, like, my Instagram is so like, I'll send it to you after.
It can be whatever. It can be wherever people.
Yeah. Twitter. Twitter. Yeah. It's Alex. It's Twitter. I think it's Alex Winton _ whatever it is. Yeah. Like, it should be. And then Twitter. Yeah. It's like the same on Instagram too. Like, yeah, _ Alex Winton on Instagram, and then I think on Twitter it's Alex Winton _ I think that's what it is. Either way, it'll be in the links and stuff like that. But yeah, like, that's where you can find me at. Twitter, I'm joking most of the time. Like, especially during the season when it's turning up. Like, you're probably gonna see me joke a lot. Don't take me serious, but don't take me too serious. Like, I might be talking about my own players. It might seem like I hate them. I don't. It's just jokes. I'm not being too serious. Like, you're going to get good takes too. Like, I mix in all that. Like same with the pod. When we get back, we're going to do the same thing. So yeah, it's going to be fun. I appreciate y'all having me on. It's going to be a good season. Just for everybody in general. But yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate y'all having me on, man. This is fun.
No doubt, man. If you want to follow Dime, you can on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, at YouTube, at the Dime NBA. I'm Josh Rodriguez at Josh_Rodriguez_. That's the actual handle for, like, our address is the youtube.com/ at the Dime NBA. That's why I say YouTube. And you can also tag us if we're in a video. So that's why I say it. He's Kwab at Kwab, aka yes. We will see you next time for another episode of the Dime.